All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I appreciate everyone being here at the go-to training. I know it's early for some people, but I appreciate it. Today we're just going to kind of briefly review some of the stuff we went over yesterday in class, collaboration and team building. I think that it's some of the stuff that's pretty important. There's very few fields that we can be in where we don't work on teams ever. It's just kind of inevitable that at some point we're going to be on a team. Whether, it's obviously in school, you have teams for this class. Um, it's kind of a dipping your toe in the water as far as teamwork goes. But as you move through your programs, you'll get bigger and bigger team projects. Depending on your degree programs, you may have really big final projects that are team projects. So I think kind of knowing how to interact within a team and knowing how team dynamics work are pretty important. I think like most of the things in this class, I'm trying to prepare everyone for for their future in school and hopefully into their careers. Um, just kind of knowing how your team functions is pretty useful. The slides are the same as yesterday, so no surprises there. I want to just go. I guess what I really meant to do is show a video yesterday in class on synergy. There's a video I really especially like for this. I think it's pretty helpful. If you go into the materials drop down, there's a video that says, or it's a link that says synergy. You can just click on that. It'll open up a window. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to give you a few minutes. We'll watch that, and I will come back after we're done. All right, so I hope everyone enjoyed that. I like that video a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. Um, for our purposes, I think it really it brings the whole idea of synergy together. It takes a bunch of small parts, small pieces, little things, and links them all together in a way that is pretty fun at the end of it. Um, yeah, no, it's really fun. I think a lot of their videos really demonstrate synergy. They've got really fun stuff. Lauren, I thought it was funny with they have their video with where they have the big Rube Goldberg machine that they make, which I was reminded of when you showed your Rube Goldberg machine video in class. Um, yeah, but point of the story, they have super fun music videos. They're a good time. But it's you think about it, it's like, okay, so they're a band, they're making music, that's great, like that's really cool. But then they go above and beyond with everything else that they're doing. They're able to say, okay, well, we have this song and the song is good, and we like that, but now we want to make this video, and it's like, okay, well, if you have time, or don't do it now, but maybe after we're done with the training, watch the making of that video, and it's like days that they spend in Russia in cosmonaut training center, because that's where all that happens. That plane, we have them in the U.S., but I don't think they like rent them out in the U.S. like they do in Russia. But people went and they went to cosmonaut training, and it's like, first you have to sit through all this training on how to behave and perform under the conditions, and then it's like, okay, well, now we have to like shoot a video up here, so we have to get all of our cameras, all of our gear, all of our stuff. um, there's translators there because most of the crew spoke Russian, and people from OK Go don't speak Russian. So it's a really fun example of a lot of small parts and pieces coming together to make something pretty impressive. So I really like that. I think it's a great example. I meant to show it in class, but maybe if no, we showed it here. That's good. But I like that because it really demonstrates the everything being more than the sum of its parts, which I think is a lot of fun. The team stages, again, I think everyone's pretty clear, hopefully, on these. I think the team stages are important to acknowledge. Depending on how long you're going to be working on your team, some stages may take longer. I know if I get a bunch of people and they're all super committed to what they're doing, the storming stages are just going to take a little bit longer because people are more passionate about what they're working on. They have more opinions. Hopefully the performing stage is reached sooner, so that people are able to be productive within their teams. We talked about norms at Full Sail, conflict. Again, I think that conflict within a team is pretty important because and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, and I was talking about people missing school and stuff over issues with maybe with their teachers or classmates. But we've all had those times when there's maybe competing ideas for a group project, and one person's idea gets picked and the other person's doesn't, and you know um, maybe that person kind of checks out after their idea didn't get picked. It happens. It's unfortunate when it does, but it totally happens. It's pretty. It's understandable. People's feelings get hurt. They get emotionally attached to the ideas that they come up with, and then when their ideas don't get picked, they sometimes have a hard time getting on board with a new idea. So that's where emotional fatigue comes in, the absenteeism or the non-participation, um, and turnover. People may leave a group or change projects or decide to work on their own. and I think sometimes it's important if you have people, who maybe you're starting to say, hey, it seems like you're kind of checked out on this. It might be worth, confronting them. I'm sure some people in this class are saying it's 4 weeks. I just got to get through 4 weeks, and then I'll be on and I'll be doing something else. But as you move forward in your programs, you get to final project and stuff. Conflict with a teammate might be completely necessary. If you have somebody who's working on your project and their work is going to affect your grade, you're probably going to be a lot more willing to get into conflict with that person and say, hey, look, shape up, because what you're doing affects me and my grades. And then more to the point, in your careers, if you're working on something, and somebody later on down the production line, has their hands on work that you've done, and maybe you don't like what they're doing, or other things, you're probably going to be willing to say, hey, look, I did this work up to this point. Now you're kind of picking it up, and it looks like maybe you're not handling it the way I thought you would, or the way I think it should be handled. And being comfortable, with conflict in the workplace, is important, because it's necessary a lot of times. A lot of times we'll let stuff go, but at a certain point, especially when we're pretty invested in something, or we really see, a situation being mishandled, or somebody taking our work and really doing not the best stuff with it. It's important to be able to know how to navigate conflict in a professional way that's it's appropriate. And like, there's going to be uncomfortable times. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. I said, as a kid, my mom was, much more comfortable with conflict than I was, so I would get uncomfortable a lot. And I think there's actually something to be said about just being there, sitting through the uncomfortable part of it, where it's just like, okay, this is uncomfortable. I don't like that. But at the end, it's like, would you rather deal with a small amount of uncomfortable feelings, or, a long-term, issue with, work or project or something else that's going on? And, I think that everyone probably has slightly different ideas, where they stand in that. Again, for a class like mine, where it's short, you don't have to be here very long, a lot of you won't see each other after this class. You might not be as willing to get into conflict with your peers, which I understand. But as you move forward, it's definitely going to be something that might be worth addressing. Has anyone had situations where they had to confront people, like in groups that they worked on, things like that? Um, and kind of what was successful for you versus what maybe wasn't so successful. And feel free, if you want to just raise your hand, it might be easier to explain that verbally, or you can jump in the chat box. Either way. Anyone at all? No hands. Silence. Well, if you think of things, feel free to raise hands. Oh yeah, I believe it. In your Rube Goldberg project, I imagine. Yeah, because everyone probably has different ideas about how they think things should go. People probably think, I think this way is better. I think other ways are better. What was successful in navigating conflict, and what was kind of less successful? Like, what were some tactics that you used that you felt like were successful, Lauren? Um, I can just unmute your microphone. There you go. You're unmuted now.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
They can hear you, but they can't
Okay,
talk back to you
cool. That's okay.
because they're muted still.
Um, okay. So yeah, there was a lot in my Rube Goldberg project. It was me and three other girls.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can imagine that kind of dynamic. But yeah, there was a lot of times where I think we talked about it yesterday. We had that situation where one of them was my best friend, and then the other two were best friends, but we didn't always gel together. Like we weren't best friends, all four of us.
Right.
There was a lot of times where it was me and my friend would come up with an idea, and then the other two would be like, well, okay, what about this? And then there'd be a lot of back and forth. But luckily, we all had a whole lot of like respect for each other because we
Hmm.
all knew we were pretty much, were competent in what we were doing. But there was a lot of times where it was like we'd get put down by the teacher or something where it's like he says, "Oh, that's a terrible idea," and then we'd be like going back to the drawing board. So one girl was always like, "Okay, we gotta change everything, gotta change everything," and then some of us were like, "No, no, 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 we've done like that took 2 hours to build, we can't change it." And then there was a lot of like, "Okay, well, what do we do?" And usually it just ended up where everyone kind of separated for a while, and then when we came back, we were all more level-headed and just went on from there.
Okay, so sometimes maybe taking a step back from your group. Um,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, no, that definitely, and it sounds like having mutual respect for people in your group, knowing that everyone's competent. It's tough sometimes if you have somebody who maybe you're not as confident in their abilities. Working on your team, it can be a really difficult situation because it's you want to be kind and polite and respectful, but you might genuinely not be confident in someone's abilities, which happens. Sometimes there's people who just maybe can't hack it who are on your team in one circumstance or another.
yeah, I've had that too.
Sure, I think I think everyone's had that. Well, thanks, Lauren. I appreciate you explaining that.
Welcome.
So right, again, the idea is that conflict is bad and should be avoided. Not really the case. I don't. I think again, there's ways to go about handling it so that people, you're respectful of people, their ideas, their feelings. It's just sometimes, it's like we were talking about yesterday in class. The pizza delivery, but not on unicycles. It's like everything was good until you got to the unicycles. Um, and that's just kind of where things are. As well as conflict representing misunderstanding or breakdown in communication, we can be totally self-expressed and communicated. We can be really clear about our ideas and still say, hey, like, I get you. I think that I understand your idea, but I think it's bad. I don't think we should do it. Again, it definitely happens that way. Nicole says, I have confrontation at work all the time because I'm a hairstylist and people will leave happy with your work and then come back and tell the manager that they want their money back and they aren't happy. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether someone is wanting it for free or if they're really unhappy. And yeah, you have to stay professional either way. It's super tough. It's weird because a lot of times I feel like people won't be confrontational to your face, which is weird. Sometimes people, they might say they're happy, but they're not, and it's weird because right, people, don't always, they don't know how to handle it, and it's a weird situation, if you're like, well, I would much rather people, be confrontational with me to my face. I feel like it's more genuine, it's more honest. You're more likely to get something done. But right, people are uncomfortable with that. A lot of people don't know how to present a conflict to someone. They don't know how to say, hey, um, I'm unhappy with this, or I don't like this. Yeah, it's definitely easier if someone tells you they have a problem and you can resolve it. Yeah, right then and there. It's weird. I think that some people maybe they don't want to hurt feelings or whatever the situation is. And it's frustrating because right, it's I think it's much easier to just say, hey, I don't like the way this is, or I don't like the way this is going, or this isn't what I wanted. And I think everyone has uh, their own way of dealing with things. Some people will just say it's not that big of a deal, or everyone kind of has their own styles and their own kind of line that they draw that says, okay, well, here's what's acceptable, and here's what's not. And it's kind of hit and miss for people. It works out sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. everyone has slightly different, range of like, here's the amount of bad things I'm willing to deal with. Um, yeah, Asia, you try to avoid confrontation as much as possible. Sure, if that's not your personality style, then it happens all the time. Lots of people try to avoid conflict. I was watching this show. It's a show on Netflix. It's called Very British Problems, and it's pretty funny. But basically, it's British people talking about their issues with pleasantry and how they have to be nice to everyone, and how maybe they're annoyed with people but they never actually say it, and they all just kind of sit and brood over things. Um, and it's an interesting show, because right, some cultures just say, hey, don't deal with this, or don't complain. Then you have some cultures that are very into it. I think you look at the marketplaces. If you go to some countries, and you go to a market, there's this haggling, and that's a normal part of it, and like everyone haggles all the time over prices. And it's normal. But then you come maybe to the U.S. and you try to go to a supermarket, and it's like, no, the prices are just what they are. That's things cost what they cost. Or in more obscure situations like car dealerships, it's like, here's the price of the car, but then there's still a haggling thing. In some places, some dealerships are like, this is a no haggle price, and yeah, it's weird. But I think at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but the person who's willing to endure the most, confrontation and ask for the most, tends to get what closest to what they want out of a situation. The squeaky wheel gets the grease is kind of the saying. Um, so if you're willing to make your upset a public issue, or express that with people in business, you can probably get your way on a lot of things. That just sometimes that's just the way it goes. But sometimes not. But everyone has their own kind of way that they feel about that. So it's okay. All of the styles are they're just styles. That's what it is. Not one is right or wrong or bad or different. I kind of was joking, when we were talking about the competition styles, that like we have competing, which kind of can almost seem like bullying sometimes, but I wouldn't say it is. The accommodating, which is it's nice, but you might not get what you want. Noah says, I've always kind of seen conflict as a game, so I tend to have a lot of fun with confrontation. Yeah, definitely. Got you in a lot of trouble with authorities in high school, so you've cut back on that. Most of your peers don't appreciate arguments either. You prefer stay in their good graces. So yeah, I mean, that definitely, it's a style, and it's just how you feel about things. Most people are pretty accommodating as far as conflict goes. They say, I'd rather just kind of not say anything and go along. This happens in restaurants all the time. Someone says, my food's not quite what I wanted, but I'm just gonna let it go because it's not that big of a deal, and I'm just gonna eat the food anyway. Avoiding, which I joked yesterday that it's the bad one. It's not. It's a style. It's the least like me, I think, is what it is. I'm genuinely uh, pretty comfortable within conflict. I don't know that I seek it out. That's not true. Sometimes I do. Especially like I like to argue like with my friends, politics, news, things like that. Um, I do kind of enjoy that. I try my best not to bring that into the classroom because there's really not the place for it. But outside of class, with my friends in my personal life, I think it's fun. I think debate is pretty interesting. I think kind of getting people's opinions, ideas. Sometimes it's fun just to take the opposite view of someone, just to kind of see what whether or not you can argue for that. It's not for everyone. Not everyone enjoys that. Some people do, and they feel like it's a sport. But right, some people would rather just kind of sit and avoid things, and that's totally okay. Um, He just says, "True, I've learned to voice my opinions more, but I don't like to be seen as rude." So yeah, you're torn at times, definitely. You just post on Facebook or Twitter. Yeah, it's tough. It's interesting. I even almost kind of like stay out of Facebook a lot. Because it's everyone's got really strong opinions, especially around election time, things like that. And for me, it's my Facebook. I have my personal friends on there, and I have my professional friends on there. So it's like, well, I'm probably going to be pretty neutral on this and not really talk about it because, right, it's one of those things that I don't know who's going to see it at the end of the day, and I don't want, yeah, especially around election time, because everyone gets really heated about, they've got their ideas, they're pretty entrenched in what they think and believe. So that's just kind of how that goes. Compromising another one, it tends to get a lot more done in compromising style, collaboration. Kind of one of the ideals. It's like if you're really willing to work with other people and you're very committed to getting things done, you get a lot done. It's pretty helpful. It's pretty useful. A lot of things get going. Um, so there's the breakdown again. We went over those. Brainstorming again. I think it's really important to kind of work with the ideas that people have. I've had a lot of situations where maybe, people who I didn't think were going to have great ideas had really good ideas or had parts of ideas. That's kind of the one is when you're willing to kind of cannibalize someone's idea and take it apart and separate the good parts from the bad parts. That's kind of um, it's pretty ideal when you can actually get to that place. It's a very useful tool. Not writing things off is pretty important. Never write someone off. You never know what people are going to come up with. They will surprise you, especially when you when you do write someone off. Group flow. I'm not going to get into it again, but you kind of get the idea. We went over these ideas yesterday in class. So we have, right, the key to finding the right balance. The most effective business teams balance these tensions in the same way. They listen closely, they're concentrated on the task, they communicate openly so everyone gets immediate feedback. They trust that genius will emerge from the group, not from any one member. When that happens, groups find flow. With it comes more effective team performance and greater innovation. Yeah, I agree with that. It's the whole thing we were saying about sometimes the group moves in a direction other than the one we expected it to, or other than the one that we had. Maybe people had said, "Hey, I think we should do this," and we find the group, kind of organically moving in a different direction. We have to be willing to explore those things and say, "Hey, you know what? It seems like we're all competent members of the group. We're all kind of collectively moving in this one direction. Let's roll with it and see what happens." Worst case scenario, we come back to the point where we diverted and we go back on the other path. But a lot of times it's the will of the group can be a lot stronger than the will of the individual. So um, as far as talking with other people, again, I think that I'd mentioned my grandfather role model kind of person who I was really impressed with when I was a kid. He would do things with carpentry that I never really expected. They seemed counterintuitive to me. But being willing to learn from people who've been down a path, it's if you want to know how someone got somewhere, ask them, find out what the path they took was. It's kind of like having a guide in life. It's like you might not go to go mountain climbing without a Sherpa or a guide or someone who's maybe been on that path before and said, hey, I know how to get to the place you want to go. It's probably worth asking someone who's been there. We have pretty cool opportunities. I believe in March we have Hall of Fame. It's probably one of the coolest times of year at Full Sail. Hall of Fame super fun. A lot of our graduates come back. They talk to us. And it's people who are out working in the industry who have accomplished a lot and are getting a lot done. And it's really worthwhile to talk to them and to take their advice. Same thing with children. Children always seem to just have different ways of figuring things out. Or slightly different perspective. They're not as entrenched in their own ideas as maybe an adult would be. And then again, people from different cultures. The American way of doing something might be, this very set up, rigid way of doing things, but you find someone who's from a different country who has a different perspective, who, maybe in their country they just do things a different way. It's worth looking at that because you never know. People are like, oh wow, this other way of doing things is fantastic. I don't know why we weren't doing this the whole time. You know, I I think it's true of a lot of things. I get into examples. I think about like Germany. They build roads for cars to drive on. They have bank turns. If you look at the Autobahn, it's built for speed. They build it so cars can go fast on it. Whereas the U.S. highway system, additionally, the Autobahn is also built so it would be difficult to destroy in war. It's built very strategically, as are most of the roads in Germany. But you come to the U.S., you look at roads, and it's like we just have really long, straight roads. People get distracted. People lose track of what they're doing. They aren't paying attention to driving. People fall asleep at the wheel all the time. If you have to, turn and pay attention and be pretty active in your roads, you won't be as distracted. You won't be as inclined to try and take on other tasks while you're driving. You'll just say, I'm driving, I better pay attention. But we've kind of built roads to be long and straight and not very exciting. And as a result, we have straighter roads, but we probably have higher accident rates. Also, for defense purposes, it's really easy for to destroy supply lines if roads are straight and predictable, and that's another story for another day. Um, but right, every country does things a little bit differently. Each culture within that country is probably even slightly more different. So mind mapping is a great way. Thought clouds, word bubbles, whatever you want to like, however you want to look at that. Getting your ideas out there and visualizing them. It's a pretty solid way to get stuff done. Um, Free writing, same thing. I think it's pretty awesome. And word association. I feel like this comes up a lot. Or there's always like word association is depicted in like psychologists on television. I feel like, or in movies. You say a word, and the other person says another word. Marketing also uses a lot of word association. So marketing business people, you want to be able to figure out, what word association does, what it does for people, what it makes people think of. You might be, working on company names, or product names, things like that. And if people have a negative connotation with a certain name or a word, it might be something that you need to investigate, because if people associate a product or a word with something bad, they're probably not going to buy it. So it's an interesting tool to use. It's also a nice way to get kind of your thought process moving and flowing. Yeah, so that's that for the day. I think almost everyone gave me their ideas for the group project. We're picking world issues. We're picking gamification. techniques for dealing with them, and then listing some of the gamification strategies. They're listed. There's mechanics of gamification. They're all listed in the reading two, the second reading for this week. It has all the gamification implements, leaderboards, point systems, rewards, things like that. They're all listed in there. So I want to know, what your gamification technique is, and then what elements of gamification are going to be part of that. So, does anyone have any questions about anything we went over today or anything that's coming up? You can jump in the chat box or raise your hand. If you don't have questions, you're free to go. If you do, jump in, ask them. I'm just going to hang out for a few minutes. I would read the gamification reading. We're going to talk about it tomorrow in class, but read the reading is there is a lot of information available about it. But I would say read the reading. That is going to give you the best information, but we'll talk about it in class tomorrow. Argument Clinic by Monty Python. Okay. Lauren, send me a link to that in the FSO platform in a message, if you don't mind, if you have time and you think about it. Awesome. I'll be on the lookout for it. Thanks. You have a good one as well.